I entered the hospital at about midnight on December 24th, 1967, in labor and suffering from respiratory distress. In the delivery room, I was given a face mask that impaired my breathing even more, and because of the Demerol I had been given, I was unable to speak up and tell them the mask was suffocating me. I reached up and tore the mask away from my face. Someone then took my hands and strapped them down to the side of the table so that I could not do anything to prevent the repeat of the gas and mask. In that period, I knew that I was going to die, and being a non-believer, I had hoped that the agony of suffocation would end quickly, and I would finally and permanently lose consciousness. Instead of losing consciousness, I found myself surrounded by noise so loud and painful that it was like a giant freight train circling my head. At a deep level, I knew that this was going to be my eternal condition. I was acutely aware of being alert and in a place of such darkness that my hand placed in front of my open eyes was impossible to see. There was no light of any kind anywhere. There was nothing in this dark, loud place but my thoughts and me. I was alone and in agony, but I had what I would call expanded knowledge. It was like all the mysteries of the universe made sense to me, and what we call important here in this life is mostly insignificant and superficial in the grand scheme of things. I sensed no one, good, bad, human, animal, or spiritual in this place but me, and I knew that I would be spending eternity here alone and without peace. I also knew that I would be here for eternity, and that I belonged here. The suffering was intense, and I was miserable. As I was thinking about my state and condition, a thought came to me that was more like a question posed by my mind. It was, what have you ever done in your life that was selfless? A deed or action that didn't have a selfish motive? As I thought about that question, I realized that I had always acted to please myself. I had never said a kind word or done a kind deed that wasn't motivated by personal gain. As I fully comprehended how selfish I was, I felt a deep regret, even remorse, that I hadn't ever done one good or kind or selfless thing. My condition changed with that revelation of regret. I can't remember just what or how things happened, but I remember coming to with an IV in my hand. IVs were not routinely given to delivery patients in those days. I was packed in ice to stem the flow of blood, which was great. The greatest thing for me was that I could breathe, with no coughing or respiratory distress whatsoever. Because of the terror of my near-death experience, and because that term was not even coined in those days, I remained silent about my experience. My universal knowledge began to slip away immediately, and as each day passed into another, all I remembered was the terrifying knowledge that there was a reality beyond this life that for me was, for want of a better word to describe it, hell. I purposed to search for the meaning of life, and also to find if there was a spiritual reality, or realm, or even God. I feared childbirth, and more importantly, death. I also purposed to do at least one good thing for someone else that was totally without selfish interest. I looked to do anonymous acts of kindness. 40 years later, this is still a challenge to me. That does it for our first experience. Let's move on to the second experience. I was a pedestrian pushing a disabled car when it was struck from behind. I was between the cars, and the impact was so great it bent the frames on both cars. I regained consciousness on a gurney in the emergency room. I knew I was going to die, and welcomed the release from pain. Because of my religious upbringing, I was expecting a man in a white robe on a golden throne to greet me. As I died, there was a cessation of all feeling, and blackness closed in, and light shrank to a pinpoint. I felt myself falling back into the blackness, and a cool sensation of wind. I felt myself turn, and then a pinpoint of light appeared in the blackness. I came out into the light and was in an upper corner of the ER, looking down at my body on the gurney. I was not disturbed by being dead or by seeing my body on the gurney. I was in a state of euphoria and a sense of perfect peace and being. I had no pain, wants, or needs of any kind. I had a sense of being home. I sensed a presence behind me and then had a communication. This was beyond telepathy. This was not hearing words in my mind and translating them into thoughts. This was a knowing as the other presence knew, an instant sharing of knowledge. I had no interest in asking questions or in seeing anything. I was completely at peace. I was then made to understand I was to return. At this point, I had my first want, the desire to remain. I wanted to know why I was to return. The wall beyond my gurney became transparent, and I was shown what appeared to be a flowing river. It was silver and shimmering as it flowed. The drops in the river were each a different color, yet all flowed together as one body of water. Nothing gave me the impression this was water or a river, but this is the best descriptive example that can be given of something I witnessed for which there are no words. The main body of the flow was silvery shimmering lights with different colored drops in the flow. I understood. I use this term because I did not hear that the colored drops were the experiences of all who had lived. The experiences existed as separate items, yet belonged to the whole. The whole was the collective knowledge of all. I understood there was no individual, just one, yet each experience was an individual making up the whole. This concept of one is so foreign to any description I can give, there seems to be no way now of describing it. My previous understanding of one was a single uniqueness. In this case, one is something else. Many being one and one being many, both existing simultaneously in the same time and space. I further understood that collective experiences are omniscient knowledge, everything that has been spoken, heard, and experienced. These colored drops contained each experience down to the memory of every cell division, every thought. All experiences were known at once by the collective consciousness that was the stream. Any experience could be known as if it were a first-person experience happening at the time it happened originally. There was no fear or joy from this stream. I use the term river of life to describe the stream. There was an understanding of complete peace, happiness, and contentment without the need or want, coming from the river of life. I had a strong desire now to join the river of life, and felt this was home, where I came from. Touching the river gave me insight into realms beyond realms, universes beyond universes, dimensions beyond dimensions. I experienced infinity. I was shown a long line of experiences in other realms of realities and other worlds. It was sometime later that I realized it was my past lives review of all existences of which I had been part. There were beings and objects, unlike anything I had ever seen or heard of, even in the imaginings of science fiction writers I had read. I was made to know there were an infinite number of realms of existence, and all were part of the one, the source. The stream had distinct layers or levels that were not divided by any kind of barrier, but each seemed to be of a different density. The one I experienced was the highest level. Where I first came after death was into the lowest level. I call it the between place, or the lowest level of transition. That stream of consciousness and knowledge is what might be termed the mind of God. I understood that I was not to join the river of life at that time. I was to go back. At this understanding, I began to have fears and questions. I again reiterated I did not want to go. I understood I was to go back. I then was made to understand there would be great pain. I did not want to face the pain that awaited me. I understood the pain would be great, and it would change and mold me. I wanted to know why and what I was to do. I was flushed with two sensations, one after the other. One sensation was a sense of an action being right that brought a brief moment of total peace and comfort I had experienced. The other sensation was one of an action being wrong. The sensation of wrong was a darkening of the light and cold. At that point, the light dimmed, and I felt myself falling back into blackness. There was a cool wind, and I felt myself turning. There was a pinpoint of light in the blackness, and I re-emerged into the light on the gurney and in my body. I was mostly unconscious for the next 30 hours and underwent surgery. I understood from family members I died again, but I did not have another experience. That does it for today's video. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, Stay safe and continue to be blessed.